spokesperson Phindiwe Gwebu joins us now. Phindiwe, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, the first announcement was that the airlines were going to be grounded for 24 hours. It then came about that now it is an indefinite grounding once security measures or safety measures have been proven by the airline. Give us the latest. What has happened overnight and this morning?
This morning, Leanne, the CAA is waiting for the airline to provide additional information. And this is purely based on following the assessment that they did yesterday, the whole day. So the airline has been supplying us with evidence as we are engaging on an ongoing basis. And as soon as we finish, we basically tell them what the status is. And if at all we need more evidence, we then go back to them and we list that evidence that we require from them. I must state that since the precautionary suspension, we have closed one level 1 finding with the airline. And that's because they had met the requirements in terms of the civil aviation regulations in regards to that finding. But we still have got 2 findings that are outstanding that we are still trying to get the airline to close.
Can you give us more on those outstanding issues? What are they?
In terms of the findings that the regulator raised with the airline was, amongst others, the deficiencies we picked up in terms of their implementation of the safety management system. So all operators are required by law to submit a safety management system manual to the CAA for approval, and Comair complied with that requirement. However, since the spate of the incidences that we have been seeing that are publicly known at this point, the CAA did become concerned in terms of just, even the close proximity of them, because just from the 10th of February up until the 7th of March, we had at least 4 incidences where a flight didn't land in its intended destination, where they either had to turn back or they had to land in a different airport. And so that kind of concerned us, because it meant that, based on their own safety management manual, it dictates to them what steps to take, especially after a risk has actually materialized. And part of that is them doing a root cause analysis to find out what caused that particular incident to occur, because by doing so, they are actually avoiding a future similar incident from happening. So what we found now is that there were some gaps, but I must say, because this process is still open, we are giving them an opportunity basically to convince us that the gaps that we are picking up are indeed closed, and that they indeed are following their safety management system manual, because that's quite critical, because without a proper risk mitigation system in place, they are unable to tell whether the same incident will recur. Yeah. And this is really at the root of what we are doing with them right now.
Yeah, and this is worrying. I mean, if we look back at some of those incidences, I mean, we remember that one of them was actually, it happened in February, and I think this was the British Airways flight East London to Johannesburg, and the Eastern Cape Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, was actually on that flight when it had to basically turn around. The landing gear had given problems there. Then there was another issue where a door had been ripped off of a British Airways flight as well during a routine towing at the Cape Town International Airport. But this is one of, as you say, or 2 or 4 different incidences. Is this, I mean, how long does it take for a civil aviation to actually say, you are grounded, that's it? I mean, how long does something like this take? I imagine you don't take something like this very lightly.
No, we don't, Leanne, because we understand the implications very well. But I just want to impress on the public that the mandate of the CAA is to ensure the users of civil aviation services that they are safe and that they are secure, and that using our systems, they are guaranteed to come out safe on the other side. So every takeoff for us is important that it ends up with a safe landing. So the system itself is very, very self-regulating as well, in the sense that an incident is not unusual to happen. In fact, aviation is not is not unique in this instance. All industries have got incidents that are happening. But in terms of our laws, there are checks and balances that are in place and that are embedded in our civil aviation regulations. And from that point of view, when an incident happens and proper mitigation actions are taken, and actually the airline or the operator, whichever it is, in that case, looks at the root causes of why that happened so that they can make sure that it doesn't happen again, it's okay. CAA will not bother you, because what we do is that in the next scheduled audit that we're going to have with you, we're going to verify whether in that particular instance you did actually close whatever cause could have led to that particular incident. But in this case, when the incidences are kind of like too close to each other, and some of them, in fact, they even look similar, it became a concern to us, because it meant that, okay, things are probably not going as they are supposed to. So when we went in on Monday, it was purely to find out what is going on. Can you just show us whether you are actually following your safety management system, you are doing your risk as you are supposed to do according to that approved manual or not? And when we then picked up those gaps in the system, we then engaged. So this was like a whole week exercise. Right up until on Friday, we then thought, okay, if we cannot get satisfactory evidence from the airline at this point, it is safe to actually just halt the services. We gave them the 24 hours purely to give them an opportunity to then demonstrate to us that, no, what we have missed, they actually do have. Yeah. And when that could not come forth, unfortunately, Leanne, we had to then extend the suspension. So the situation will persist until such time that they have actually satisfied the requirements.
If I may ask you, I mean, something like this, and this is for the customers, the customers' interests right now, because there's been a lot of inconvenience caused, but we understand that it's safety first, and that at the end of the day is all that really matters. But how long can something like this take? Because obviously a lot of customers now are, just sort of hanging on, not knowing what to do. Their flights have been cancelled, some have been stranded, others are looking for different flights and airlines, and they're out of pocket for a lot. But a grounding of an airline, I mean, can this last for a month, a week, a few days? Do you have any idea on how fast a turnaround can be on the outstanding documents and information you need?
Leanne, like I was just saying earlier, one of the findings, we closed it over the weekend. That means it literally took us a day or so for that finding to be closed. So it's really in the hands of the operator at this point to be able to provide the evidence. But I mean, I think I've spoken to you countless times, and you would find that there are situations where a grounding will take us well over a week to close. But it has happened before that a grounding will last a couple of days and then it's over. Yeah. So what I want to give assurance of is that the CAA team is on standby. They worked through the night on Friday and on Saturday, and yesterday they worked the whole day as well. This is just to make sure that we don't inconvenience the passengers, but we're able to provide the service immediately. Yeah. And so that is just the commitment that we're showing. I must say, though, also, Leanne, that the airline has shown a lot of commitment on this as well, because they have been responsive. They have asked for meetings with us. We have asked for meetings with them. And so the engagement is ongoing, really. And I'm hoping that, in the next few days, we should find each other. Yeah,
well, we can only hope so, but at the end of the day, it's also the trust in the airline from the passengers that are, entrusting their lives, literally entrusting their lives and getting on these flights to ensure that it is safe. One of the warning signs for me, and a worrying comment that's come out of NUMSA, is saying that, due to all of these cost-cutting measures, they are very, very worried that the aircrafts are not being given enough ground time for proper maintenance. And that in itself is a worrying statement, because this is you have to spend money and time on maintaining these aircrafts. I mean, seeing a Kulula engine failing, that is another incident that came up that also led to the grounding. These kind of things are very worrying. It takes a lot of money to run an airline, and you need to maintain these aircrafts.
Mm-hmm. And this is the reason why, Leanne, we take the precaution, and it's precisely, I don't think many South Africans know, but when you buy your ticket and with the airlines, there's about 20 rands that comes to the CAA, and that 20 rands that you're paying is so that we can ensure your safety. And from that point of view, I think it's important that the public knows that we're doing this in their interest, really. And it is things like whether, when unions start to speak as well, you would know that it's probably employees coming from the airline. So we don't turn a blind eye, but we work on evidence. We cannot work on speculations because that would be totally unfair to the operators. So we're going with what we're seeing on paper, and it has to be demonstrated. And if it checks out, the airline will be back in the air in no time. However, one compromise we cannot make is when we cannot see and we are not convinced that the airline is actually following their own manual. This is not something that CAA came up with and said you should be doing this. This is something that the airline would say, this is how we are going to mitigate risks in this business. And if we are not able to pick up that all of the steps that they've said they are going to do are actually happening, then it's a problem. Unfortunately, the CAA just cannot compromise when it comes to that.
Just as I begin to wrap, just advice to passengers at this time. Obviously, they have to get hold of the airline. I mean, that is what the route that is taken right now. What backing do they have? I mean, is there only a way of getting financial reimbursement through the airline? Are they covered in any way for this, especially if it's an emergency flight that they've had to now lose this ticket, book on another airline, and they're out of pocket in both directions? Do you have any advice for consumers at this time?
Leanne, normally the airline, let me tell you this, when we met with the airline on Friday, they made very, very strong arguments with regards to the disruptions this will cause to the public. And therefore, they are very much aware of that. And just purely through the engagements that we have with them back and forth before we actually do pull the plug, it from our point of view, it actually gives an indication to the airline to start making alternative arrangements so that their passengers are not inconvenienced in that manner. CAA's mandate really doesn't extend to the ticketing and the financial aspects of the business. And that's why I would rather advise that if at all they are not getting satisfaction from the airline in terms of alternative methods, they should approach the Department of Transport in that regard. However, I've seen the CEO speaking in the media to say that they are making alternative arrangements. They are booking their passengers in other flights. And I think perhaps a good advice I would give is for the passengers to make arrangements well ahead of time, because I think this announcement now was made already on Saturday morning. So I think it should be enough time for people to say, okay, things that don't look really that okay, what alternative can I use? And I'm hoping that the airline will come to the party in terms of assisting the passengers.
Yeah, indeed. Let's leave it there. Thanks. Please keep us updated as to what happens. We'll get an update throughout the day, no doubt. I'm sure Comair working frantically behind the scenes to try and get everything to the Civil Aviation Authority so that they can get back in the air. But the reality is that you want to make sure that you are getting into an aircraft that has been serviced and that is in proper working order. You don't want to put your life at risk here, and that's what the Civil Aviation Authority are ensuring. So thanks again to CAA spokesperson Phindiwe Gwebu.